and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Janice, roll call, please.
Certainly. City of Banning. City of Calimesa.
Here.
City of Canyon Lake.
Here.
City of Corona.
Here.
City of Eastville.
Here.
City of Hemet. Here. City of Urupa Valley. Here. City of Lake Elsinore.
Here.
City of Menifee. Here. City of Moreno Valley.
Here.
City of Murrieta.
Murrieta.
City of Murrieta is present.
Here. Sorry.
City of Norco.
Here.
City of Paris. City of Riverside. City of San Jacinto. City of Temecula. Thank you, sir. City of Wildomar.
Here.
County of Riverside District 1. County of Riverside District 2. County of Riverside District 3.
Happy New Year, Janice.
Happy New Year, sir. County of Riverside District 5.
Here.
Eastern Municipal Water District. Western Municipal Water District. Morongo Band of Mission Indians. Riverside County Superintendent of Schools.
Here.
WRCOG TAC Chair. That concludes roll call, and we have quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment and welcome our new committee. We have two new committee members, Jeff Hewitt from the City of Calimesa and Kevin Bash from the City of Norco. Kevin.
Next month. He's not official yet.
Thank you. Public comment. We have one person requesting to speak. Arnold. Arnold, Janice said you can speak yet.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Just wanted to bring your attention to a flyer that's been placed at the dais. We're having elected official briefings on the draft regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategies, and the next one scheduled especially for elected officials in the western part of the county is January 13th. It says here 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and this will immediately follow the Riverside County Transportation Commission meeting in this room. And so if you could come out and join us and invite your fellow colleagues, come out and join us. We actually have received a number of RSVPs, but we're still looking to increase that and get as many elected officials as we can to receive a briefing and receive comments on the draft plan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Moreno Valley, you're pushing your button. You got something on there? Just want to make sure you didn't want to say something. I turned you off. Stop. Don't push the button. Okay. Thank you. And I need our counsel for a moment here.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard during the roll call that we have a member, our member from Temecula on the phone call. The call-in number is exclusively for those wishing to call in for the public hearing on the HERO program, and it's not for board members calling in for any other purpose. So I'm going to have to ask, unless our Temecula representative is calling in for purposes as a member of the public for participating in the HERO public hearing, I'm going to have to ask that the board member hang up the call. I don't like doing that. It's not the way I like to start the first year by asking my board members to leave the meeting. But okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your understanding.
All right. Next on our agenda is the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are moved in one motion unless a member of the public or a member of this body wishes to pull an item. Do we have any requests to speak on any items for the consent calendar? No? I'll bring it up to the dais.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
City of Murrieta, please vote.
I think he left.
Did he? Bear with me, I have to mark them absent.
Okay. All right, and that passes 19 with one abstention. Okay, next we have our HERO program activities update. Barbara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Barbara Spooner, Director of Energy Programs at WRCOG. The HERO program provides financing to residential and commercial property owners for energy-efficient water conservation and renewable energy projects. That financing is then added to the property owner's property tax for repayment. I do have one correction to my staff report, and this is to add the city of Dos Palos as being accepted by the committee as an associate member to WRCOG. They had adopted the resolution of participation and neglected to let us know that they had done so. After today's action of holding a public hearing, accepting the updated program report, and accepting the new associate members, there will be 289 jurisdictions participating in the California HERO program. I wanted to provide you just with a brief overview of the activities that have been occurring with the HERO program since January of 2012 through December 18th. We have nearly 28,000 applications that have been approved in the WRCOG subregion, with over 17,000 projects actually being completed for well over $327 million. This again equates to an annual numbers of approximately $567 million in an economic impact, over 2,700 jobs being created and or retained, over 37,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions being reduced, with 17 plus million in utility savings and another 141 gigawatt hours of energy being saved from the HERO program in Western Riverside. As part of the program update, an updated Exhibit B of the California HERO program report has been included as an attachment to the staff report. This map includes the jurisdictions that are included in today's public hearings in the cities of Pinole, Sausalito, Woodlake, the counties of Contra Costa, unincorporated area, the county of San Luis Obispo, unincorporated area, and the county of Yuba, unincorporated area. Once the public hearing is concluded, I am asking that the Executive Committee adopt Resolution 0-01-16 to formalize these jurisdictions into the HERO program. I am also asking that the committee members accept the new cities as associate members of WRCOG. These cities include the cities of Brisbane, Dos Palos, Greenfield, and Justine. After the acceptance of the aforementioned cities, I am then asking the committee to adopt Resolution 2-16 and setting their public hearing for February 1st, 2016. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chair, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, so I'd like to open the public hearing now. Are there any requests to speak on this public hearing?
I have no requests.
Anyone on the phone?
Do we have any callers online for the California HERO program? I hear none.
All right. No requests from the public. This is your last chance. Okay. I will close the public hearing and bring it to the dais. Any comments, motions? Happy to start the new year off. I need a motion. We'll take the two on the end now. It's a laid-back group. Thank you. Please vote.
I'm sorry, can you tell me who motioned and seconded, please? Paris? Paris motioned. Who seconded?
Eastville.
Eastville. Thank you.
And that motion passes 19 with one abstention. All right. Our next item is 6B, feasibility study for the Western Riverside County on a formation of a community choice aggregation program. Barbara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, good afternoon, committee members. I'm still the same, Barbara Spuder, Director of Energy Programs at WRCOG. I'm here to provide you with a presentation on what a community choice aggregation or CCA program is, and a request to release a request of proposal to conduct a comprehensive feasibility study regarding the development/implementation of a community choice aggregation program for Western Riverside County. A community choice aggregation program, or CCA, is a program allowed under Assembly Bill 117, which allows jurisdictions to purchase power and use their utility companies' distribution lines to transmit the power to the customers. A CCA can be developed as an individual jurisdiction, like the City of Lancaster, as a joint powers authority like Marin County or Sonoma County, or there can be a third party hiring to administer a party like Good Energy. And this is just one of the areas that we would focus on in our feasibility study. A CCA is a hybrid between the investor-owned utility, in our case Edison, and the municipal utility. It's where the CCA purchases the power, but the IOU continues to maintain the distribution and transmission lines, and they also provide the billing. CCAs are generally able to provide consumers with cheaper power. A lot of this is due to the fact that the savings comes from the fact that the IOU needs to produce a profit for its shareholders, where a CCA does not. This is a real simplified slide that shows from the customer's perspective that there's really no change. Again, the CCA purchases the power, Edison, in our case, delivers the power, and your consumer receives the power. In November and December of 2015, WRCOG staff, along with San Bernardino Associated Government Sandbags staff, met with 3 existing CCAs to gain their insight into the development of their programs. We met with the counties of Sonoma and Marin, as well as the City of Lancaster. And this is just an overview of those meetings. Marin Clean Energy has been operational for over 5 years. Sonoma Clean Energy has been operational for a little over 18 months. And the City of Lancaster has been operational for almost a year. While Marin and Sonoma are supplied by PG&E, the City of Lancaster is actually supplied by Edison. So it's very relevant to what we're working on in the subregion. As you can see, most of the rates from the CCAs are generally lower than what their IOU presently provides, with the City of Lancaster being 3% lower than Edison. Marin has been pennies higher than PG&E for the past 3 years, but they're going to see a decrease in this next coming year. Sonoma has remained consistently lower than their IOU. The CCA focuses on 3 main areas. We're looking at the local economy, jobs creation, bringing in local renewable projects into our regions for development, local control, and consumer choices. Some of the northern county CCAs have a focus on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but again, this is about saving money for our consumers. Customers do have the option of opting out of a CCA and remaining with their IOU if they desire. So you can see the opt-out rates range from anywhere from 5 to 20%, Lancaster being the lowest with 5%, and that's an aggregate between their residential and their commercial numbers. One of the questions that we did receive from the WRCOG Administration and Finance Committee, as well as the WRCOG Technical Advisory Committee, was regards to the franchise fees that the local jurisdictions receive. For Edison and the CCAs, the franchise fee is actually calculated on what the consumer would have been paying Edison. So it is actually calculated at a higher rate than what the CCA is actually paying. And the reason for this is so that the jurisdiction remains whole with their franchise fees through the formation of a CCA. Staff is proposing to have a comprehensive feasibility study that's going to look at all 18 cities and the county and provide provide member jurisdictions with the information needed in moving forward or determining whether or not the development and creation of a CCA in Western Riverside County is feasible. Again, the feasibility study it's going to look at the successes and failures of CCAs, whether that is in California or in the nation. Most CCAs are found on the East Coast. They're very popular back there. However, they are coming to the West Coast. An examination of which model would be best to use, as I had mentioned before, there's an individual, so like a jurisdictional, city, county want to do it on their own, a JPA or a regional approach, pulling the cities and the counties together, or hiring a third party to implement the program on its behalf, and then that third party providing a subsidy back to the local administrator. And again, that's what our feasibility study would examine, what is the best opportunity for our member jurisdictions. Looking at the past and future utility rates, as well as an analysis of the past and future energy markets. This is very key, especially with the recession that had occurred. We want to know that if a CCA is developed, would it be able to withstand another recession that had gone in the past? This is very valuable information that each of the jurisdictions should have knowledge of to make sure when we're making these decisions. Estimated customer participation, looking at the residential versus the commercial sectors, the industrial manufacturing sectors, what our participation rates would look like based on the other CCAs. And then finally, looking at the implementation costs, what it looks like for the formulation documents and governance, the staffing, timelines, and et cetera. And staff's research, we've been able to see that feasibilities really run anywhere from about $250,000 to $400,000, depending on the study size. I will say that the City of Lancaster actually shelled out nearly $900,000 for their study, and that was the most that we have seen. Sonoma and San Mateo County spent approximately $200,000 each. The County of LA actually has $300,000 dedicated to examine its unincorporated area. And then we have a number of other cities and counties within Southern California that are looking to do a CCA. We have the South Bay cities, the city of Fontana, as well as the city of San Diego. The counties of San Bernardino and San Diego are also moving forward with completing feasibility study. Sandbag's looking at possibly conducting a feasibility study alongside WRCOG. And we have also reached out to Coachella Valley to see if there was interest in the eastern portion of Riverside to see if they would be wanting interest to look at doing a regional county-wide study. And CVAC's going through its committee structures this week, and we should know more in the next few weeks on that. The County of Riverside is in the early stages of gathering its data, and staff believes that there is an opportunity to work together with the county to have a comprehensive study completed that would fold in the county's data to provide a greater economies of scale and to provide each member jurisdiction with the information necessary on an individual basis on how it would like to proceed with the formation of a CCA. Timelines, development of a CCA, it's not a short time. Takes a little over a year. The more CCAs that have become up and running makes our timeline a little bit shorter because everyone is learning from their past barriers and hiccups. So we could potentially be up and running by March of 2017. Steps to date, we've been through WRCOG's Admin and Finance, meetings with Marin, Sonoma, Lancaster. We've been to the Technical Advisory Committee, back to Admin and Finance. And we're here today at the Executive Committee giving you your presentation. Throughout January, if the recommended action is approved, we'll be working with interested parties to refine the feasibility study, whether it's just Western Riverside or including Eastern Riverside as well, or possibly San Bernardino. And in January, we're in the process of setting up a meeting with Good Energy staff, which is a third-party provider, to sort of get more information on how a commercially managed program works, so that we have that information as well. Our requested action is to direct the WRCOG Executive Director to release a request for proposal to conduct a feasibility study regarding the formation of a community choice aggregation program for Western Riverside County. And again, we have run this through the Admin and Finance Committee and Technical Advisory Committee, and have received concurrence with our recommended action. And that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chair, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any requests to speak on this item, Janice?
I have none.
Okay. And before, I have a couple members that have punched in, but I'd like to hear from our TAC chair. If you have any comments from the chat, this one before the TAC.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The city manager TAC did spend a lot of time discussing the pros and cons of this, and our focus was really on making sure that the franchise fees were going to be kept whole. And so we did recommend unanimously that this gets moved forward. And I know Finance and Admin has looked at it a couple of times, and we're very supportive of going out and exploring what those possibilities are with the results of the study and just seeing what the market can bring us.
Thank you. County of Riverside, District 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to point out, and we have a little situation here, the County of Riverside is also getting ready to conduct the feasibility study. So here we go, which doesn't, get caught as a little problem. I think some way or another we have to coordinate this action to where we all end up in the same place, but we're definitely going ahead with one. It looks at WRCOG, I guess, and that sort of, we want to make sure that these end up, they have the same benefit and we're not working at cross purpose. So I'm going to ask, we'll get Brian Nestandy, who's handling this for the County of Riverside here. You may want to say a few words, and I'd like, Brian and Rick to get together and sort of find a common ground on this before we get too far down the road.
Okay.
So,
Brian, did you want to come up and?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, as Supervisor Ashley mentioned, the county has initiated a study for a CCA, and what we're doing it a little bit differently. I think what we're going to be doing is a study that should go about 30 days, and we're doing a preliminary study in the sense of, and the company's called Good Energy, by the way, and they're a nationwide company based in New York, and they have about 160 CCAs that they manage, and so they're a good firm, and their recommendation is do a study first of what do you have in your county, what is the electricity rates, kind of do an inventory of the prices that you're paying now, and what they do is an economic analysis, then match that against what is the market rate for electricity, and then they see does this make sense or doesn't it, just on the face of it, of what you're paying now versus what you might be able to pay through a contract with another vendor from an outside entity. So we plan on the executive office of bringing that 30-day report to the board, hopefully in about 30 days, and ask the board if they would like to continue on a deeper dive, a more in-depth approach, and at that time, depending on what the economic analysis says. So we're hoping to work with WRCOG so we don't duplicate efforts, but in fact stay on the same track, hopefully, and end up in the same place that we probably have to, or the board members probably have to think through how this makes sense so there is not duplication. But if once again, if the economic feasibility says this is something that the county should look at, then probably start figuring out how we do it appropriately or economically with WRCOG.
Okay. Any questions?
okay, very good.
Sure.
Yeah, if I could add to that, Supervisor Ashley has a good point, and Brian and I have talked about this as well, and it's important. Good energy is sort of one of the three options that exists with regard to putting together a CCA. So one option is an individual jurisdiction can do this by themselves, as is the case with Lancaster. The second option is a more of a sub-regional approach through a JPA. such as what has been occurring in Sonoma and Marin counties, and I'm just using California examples. The third energy is the good energy approach, where you have a separate provider that provides the services sort of in a turnkey fashion. So I think what the county is doing is something that can very easily and necessarily be a piece of the broader study and the broader options. And so perhaps as the county moves ahead with the good energy approach, that just simply becomes a plug-in to the bigger, broader, more comprehensive study that we're envisioning. And in doing so, we can achieve economies of scale and avoid the duplication that the supervisor raised, and kind of move ahead in a fashion that provides the individual jurisdictions, with the information they need to consider whether or not any of these approaches is worth pursuing.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, it might be good, because the county has a cross-section, obviously, of the county and where people live. We thought, and it's just a $25,000 study, we thought might be useful to say, looking at a cross-section here, does it make sense on an economic analysis to go forward before we invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process? So it might be something that might be useful to WRCOG going forward.
We passed this
Here's
test,
what we've got, yeah.
And it doesn't cost very much, and we're paying for it. Is that all right?
Thank you.
If it does work out, the county's going to want to be involved all the way. We're not going to be a passive
Calamasa.
person here.
Yeah, I might be a little bit ahead of the game here, but with the recent re-upping of 5 more years of residential, subsidies coming for residential solar, a big issue in the news lately has been how Edison's going to recoup. In other words, when all these homeowners go ahead and sell back energy, they say, "Hey, we're supplying the transmission lines. Where's our fee and cut?" Could this CCA have any kind of advantage in dealing with that? Because it looks like we're making Edison more of a transmission company instead of a generation company.
That's a good question.
We don't mind.
I think the philosophies of the IOUs are very different when you look at what's going on in Northern California with PG&E and Edison, as well as San Diego Gas and Electric and where they are. In terms of the recouping of the solar fees, one of the pieces that the California Public Utilities Commission did pass and accept for the utilities was for Edison to be able to charge their $10 per solar customer to recoup their piece on this. Now, in terms of a CCA, the CCA is only purchasing the power, the distribution lines, and that charge that Edison has will remain what that charge is, because that's their charge to run the system. So they would always charge that. We would just have a different power generation charge on the bill.
Thank
you. Okay, how do we do this? Could we, if we get a motion to move ahead, but subject to getting the county report back and digesting it, looking at it, and then take action after final action after that. How do you?
Well, let's look at our requested action. What's the requested action for this, Barbara?
Our requested action is to direct the executive director to release a request for proposals to do a comprehensive feasibility study, which we can modify.
I say after we receive the report, see what it is. If it comes out and the numbers are bad, you've embarked on a witch hunt.
If I could make a suggestion on that, I think based on the conversations we've had with the executive office and Brian can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think maybe a good approach for the board to consider is, if it decides to move ahead with the CCA, is that probably the best thing to do would be to incorporate the findings of what Good Energy is doing, because as I mentioned, what the county is doing is they're looking at that commercial approach, which is just one of the 3 options. So I think what we can do, the recommended action is to move ahead with the RFP, but before we issue it, we want to refine it, and we can refine it to incorporate, once we get a more specific idea of what the county is doing through its scope of work, we can remove that work from our RFP, and then we can plug in what the county has been doing. So that way we end up with the comprehensive results without paying twice.
Got to make sure that we digest this and know what this is, and it's part and parcel, what we're doing is part of our knowledge base before we just move on. And I make a motion, approving this with that change, if it's appropriate right now. I'd like to do that.
Before you make your motion, we have a couple other folks that want
Okay.
to talk, sir.
Fine.
First District Supervisor.
I guess I just have a different take on it. I'm sitting here watching government entities go two different directions, spending taxpayer dollars going two different directions, and I don't know if we as this body are going to go forward with this particular study, the county should probably just take a back seat and not spend any money and let this study go through, or if the county's going to do its study, this group should just take a back seat and let that study go through. But we shouldn't throw money out there and have two different firms doing two different studies. Pick one.
One at a time.
That would just be my approach on this. And I frankly don't care which one we pick, but just pick one and go with that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Yuba Valley.
Yes, I agree with Supervisor Jeffries that I think I would feel more comfortable hearing what comes back from the initial Riverside County survey or study or whatever they're going to call the preliminary one before we even decide whether or not we want to move forward with this. I'm not comfortable saying today, yes, I want to move forward with this when we haven't heard what that study is going to say. Now, I guess I understand that it's only one approach to forming the CCA that you're studying, but I still think it's going to be a good indicator. So I know I'm not comfortable moving forward today. I'd rather see this brought back after the Riverside County study comes back. And I think it's extremely important that we don't duplicate efforts and that we're working together on this. So I agree, the whole taxpayer dollar and all of that. So that would just be my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As usual, Supervisor Jeffries and I are in complete agreement. Okay, most of the time.
Some of it.
I don't think the proposal here before us today is to choose a particular structure or method of CCA. I think what you're asking for permission to do is to send out a request for proposals. Is that,
Correct.
did I read that correct?
Correct, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay. So the executive director has suggested that we wait and see what comes back from the county's initial study and carve out the results of that out of WRCOG's request for proposals so that the two can be married together. And it sounds like that would be a 30-day wait. Doesn't seem unreasonable. And then we can come back with what the county found out and the RFP that would be amended if the board wants to go forward with that. Is that what's on the floor right now?
Yeah.
Is that what you suggested, Rick?
Yeah, I think that's what.
That's what I'm trying to, motion I'm trying to make.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to hear what Mr. Bishop
No,
was.
I think so. I mean, what I'm in talking with the county and thinking this through with RFP and clearly wanting to avoid duplication, but at the same time wanting to do a study that's comprehensive enough to be worthwhile. The idea was the county's moving ahead in answering some questions on a preliminary basis on one of the three options. We can easily take that information and include that into our study and just remove it as an ask for a consultant to do pursuant to the RFP because it will already have been done. So I'm trying to find a way to transition what the county is doing, recognizing that it's fairly limited and a limited geographic area, and include it into a broader study that we think would benefit the jurisdictions if it really wants to answer the question about whether or not it should move ahead with
To
this.
submit, say the board decided to go forward with WRCOG's request for proposals, is there a cost attached to asking for those RFPs?
Well, we've allocated $250,000 for the comprehensive study.
To do the study?
Yeah.
And the study would be initiated by what comes back from the RFPs, or that is the study?
Well, that's just what we've initiated as far as a cost that we would be willing to assume for the consultant, and then we would pursue a competitive bid process and see what we can get out of that. I totally agree with Supervisor Jeffries, though. One thing we want to do is avoid having two studies that are aiming at the same thing. We're also
Let's do the cheaper, let's do the 25, and then go from there, and go after that. It's only 30 days, and this isn't like the end of the world. We take a comprehensive action day.
Okay, we have a couple more board members that want to speak. Paris.
In light of the cost for the other jurisdictions that we've heard of, anywhere from the 200, 300, and even the 900,000 in Lancaster, I just think it's more prudent to look at the results from the $25,000 that's already been allocated and in the motion already. And then based on that, we may not even want to go out for a request for proposal, but I think since that's already in the making, that it would be behooving that we would look at that and those results first before we go forward with this.
Okay. Thank you. Moreno Valley.
Yeah, I think we're all saying pretty much the same thing. We all agree. I have a tendency to agree with Director Bishop. This is not a cost. This isn't a cost to WRCOG to ask for your proposals. And I don't think we need to do this linearly, do one for 25, then do the next one after, but by sending them both out. Then when we get the one for 25,000, just as Director Bishop said, we can incorporate that. And as Mr. Jeffries said, we can pick the best option that we have. This is not a cost factor at this point. It's just a request for proposals. Then we spend the money if we choose to or not. That'll be the separate discussion. So I'm in favor of seconding this one to go forward for a request for RFQ. So.
Okay, thank you. I just have one question. If the county's only spending $25,000 and some of these other jurisdictions are spending $300,000, $900,000, I mean, you kind of get what you pay for, right? I mean, my question is, what are we getting? I mean, how detailed is the study going to be? Is it going to answer all the questions that we in the cities have?
And once again, Good Energy, the company, they're already doing it for Fontana, one of the entities that have chosen to go forward. So they use a more staged approach to say, first look at what your inventory is. And they say, as a prudent first step, let's take an inventory, let's see what the market is out there for energy, what kind of energy you might want to purchase and so on, and then see, is there a delta, does it make sense to go forward, and once again, to do a deeper dive into that and do a heavier study than that you're going to need to do at that point. But this is, they recommend, like I say, once again, just a first inventory of what you have there to look at, to bring, that's why we plan to bring back to the board saying, here's what we know, here are some choices going forward, here's the cost going forward. Because you do invest going forward, you're going to invest a fair amount of money, so we thought it would be a good first step to do it. And we haven't pre-chosen a particular method, it's just, once again, an inventory and an analysis of that usage in your area and what the market has out there.
Brian, are we looking at just the unincorporated areas for the counties?
Yes, sir.
So it wouldn't include the cities?
Correct.
WRCOGs would include only the cities?
Includes Western Riverside County.
Would it only, or would it include all of Western Riverside County?
It would include all of Western Riverside County, and then depending on actions by CVAG and Sandbag, there could be even a larger effort. And the idea there being there probably are economies of scale as a purchaser if you operate it as a larger entity rather than an individual entity, although that remains to be seen through a study.
But even if it's just Western County, it's incorporated and unincorporated areas?
Correct.
Okay.
If I can just make one, excluding municipal operations, so the city of Riverside, the city of Banning, the small piece of city of Corona, and the newer section of the city of Moreno Valley doesn't.
That have their own.
They have their own municipal utilities, so they would not be included in that.
Okay.
Supervisor Jeffries.
I guess my question is to Brian. Let's assume for a second that we decide to go instead with the larger, more comprehensive study out the gate. You may want to save this for tomorrow. Why would we bother spending at the county level 25,000, why wouldn't we just take the back seat and let this study go through?
Well, first of all, because we've already done it, we're starting the process. So we're going forward at this point, and we'll let it play out roughly 30 days to see where we are. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's already
And the
underway.
Indian Nations are unincorporated area too.
Correct.
Okay.
So the unincorporated part of the county also includes, all the tribal members as well. So this would be, just offered unincorporated, it would be offered to all our tribal partners as well.
Yoruba Valley.
So I'm curious, I didn't really understand that initially the study is only the unincorporated portions of Riverside County. So if it comes back and it looks feasible, and obviously there's a lot of ifs in what I'm going to say, and if the supervisors decide to move forward, is it only going to be the unincorporated areas, or is Riverside County looking at being able to offer this to the cities as well?
I think that will be the discussion then at that point, that the board will have that discussion presumably to talk about. And we will lay out some options for the board to consider, and then the board will have those considerations of whether or not, because there is going to be an option of, okay, now how do you want to partner? Do you want, as Rick said, do you want to do a JPA with different entities? What are those options, and so on and so forth? So that will then be put forward to the board relatively next month to look at those options and probably enter discussions in with various entities that might want to join that JPA, or however the construction might be. Does that answer your question?
Mayor Wright.
Well, at first my concern was that if we do our RFP now and based on, and then come back after the county does their preliminary study, then we'd have to come back and we we might have to change our scope of work then with regards to the RFP we initiated earlier. But if it's only the unincorporated area, it still would be a moot point, I guess, because we would move forward with all the jurisdictions instead of just the unincorporated area. So my concern at first was that we would have to go back with it from the RFP and change the scope of work. But if that's not a consideration, then it's not a consideration.
We can write the request for proposals to take into account the work that the County of Riverside is undertaking, so that when we receive the proposals back and if we select it, by the time the county's done with their 30 days, we would have our proposals back and then we could move forward.
And my other concern is, what kind of study you can get back in 30 days? I mean,
You're studying the members. If the income's not there, nothing works. It doesn't matter how feasible it is to do.
Okay.
If it doesn't pay, the study the county's doing is going to see if the revenue's there. So it's worth going after. If there's no money there, then forget it.
Superintendent Young, you had your button pushed. Did you give up on us?
Well, my question was answered by Ms. Boonhauer, because I was thinking if one entity has a unincorporated area of the county study going on, just looking at rates, what's generated and so forth, and WRCOG, which includes the cities plus that, is looking at also doing a similar study, then why not see if you could bifurcate them, which was the question that she answered, and said that they could actually, I think I heard you say the county's piece of that could be separated, so that they may not want to have two studies on the same area, but they might want to have one study for one area and one study for the rest of it.
Correct. We can write the RFP to take into account the work that the county is undertaking.
Yeah, then that eliminates the duplication piece that I think was a big concern.
Banning.
Thank you. I have a question. Brian, you mentioned that the study was already in process. So how far along in the 30-day process are you? And if you look at taking that information, would we not want to do the same thing for WRCOG to find out if it's reasonable to expect any kind of true savings based on the cities, and then how much would it cost on the city side? I know that's two questions, but I'll ask you for your first.
The study is literally starting this week, so we're just beginning the process, so.
Okay.
Is that, and I think the other question is probably approved last month.
All right, we have one more person in the queue, Calamasa.
I have
Did
the
you-
rest of my
I'm
questions.
sorry. you didn't get
I
an
think-
answer. Sorry, please answer.
Yes, Committee Member Franklin. We could, what we're proposing is, again, to do a comprehensive study, which is to look at everything. We want to look at, because we're fairly certain that, well, we've seen that CCAs are viable. They've been viable in Sonoma, they've been viable in Marin, they've been viable in the city of Lancaster with ultimate savings for the local jurisdictions. But really, we want to take the holistic approach and look at what, your past and future rates are going to look like, what your customer participation is going to look like, what your profile is going to look like. Because you may be sitting around thinking that your heaviest load is going to be from your residential customers, where in reality it might be in the middle of the night from your commercial customers. So we want to look at that. To make sure that that's where the economic feasibility is, and looking at it on an individual, whether an individual jurisdiction wants to undertake that, like the city of Fontana is undertaking at the moment, or if it wants to be a collective regional approach, or if it wants to look at on a third-party commercial managing type program. So there's some various options, and again, we want to look at the holistic approach and pulling everything in to give you the best information possible in making a determination moving forward.
Okay, and the last piece to my question is, what are the negatives? I know we've heard a lot of the positives. What are the negatives to doing this kind of program?
The risk involved is in the purchasing of the power and making sure that you have, whether it's you hire the staff to do it or the consultant firm, but to make sure that you have the best person available that is truly in mind with the markets and purchasing the power. And our speaking to the city of Lancaster and the assistant city manager is his number one thought out of the get-go was every jurisdiction in California should be a CCA, and the IOU should just be distribution lines. He sees no negative. The benefits being the fact that there is a revenue source attached to it. So with the removal of RDA funds, they've been able to use those revenues back. On a regional approach, it could be like the HERO program. Any additional revenues would be given back to the local jurisdictions.
Calamasa.
Each of the cities are a little bit different. I think I know that out of everybody in here, we're the only platinum city as for SCE because we save so much. But I really think that the county areas are much closer to most of the cities up here, that those differences are very small. I think the bigger differences are between like Debbie's and Rusty's city because they have their own. So I'd really like to see this study done and then go from there and mold an RFP that really makes sense to see if we're going to do something, if it really can change. But I think we run the risk of a lot of duplicity right now. And I would like to see what this smaller, cheaper one does, because it applies to most all of us, and then go from there. That's what I'd like to see.
All right, our executive director.
Yeah, just to kind of add on to this, when we started down this track and we started having these discussions with you and with the city managers and members of the TAC, we listened to a lot of questions that came up. And so the questions that arose over the course of several months of meeting with the committees is what has contributed to the development of this RFP. And so when it's all said and done, we feel like if you're to make a decision on whether or not you want to pursue a CCA, you need to have as much information as possible, and that's why we developed the three options. The county is looking at one of those three options, and as Brian had articulated, it's kind of the first step in the first chain. So they've got $25,000 into this, and depending on what the consultant comes back with, that amount could increase as the responsibility and the scope broadens. Certainly, that information is a valuable component to this discussion, but this discussion is much broader than just that one piece. And so what we really need to do ultimately is, no matter how it's done, is to be able to fit these pieces together so that when it's all said and done, that, we've provided what our admin committee and the TAC have asked for, and depending on your action, what you ask for, and that is, what are all the pros and cons to doing this? Where have CCAs worked and where have they not worked? Where have they been studied and where have they not been pursued? What are the costs of implementing something like this? And what is the best format to do it? Is it a commercially managed program? Is it an individual program, or is it a joint program? So, one way or the other, if you want to move ahead with this, it really is going to be important to take a look at it on a comprehensive basis. And what's important for us is, whether the county does this completely by themselves, or we do it, or if it's a kind of a joint venture, is to make sure that there is no duplication. But in the end game, you're not going to have, unless you have all of the information and tools in front of you, there's no reason to even consider moving ahead. So you need to have a comprehensive approach in some fashion, regardless of who does it.
Okay, you guys got to stop pushing buttons here. We'll never get out of here. All right, we have 4 people, Calamasa, Riverside District 1, District 3, and Moreno Valley, and we're closing this. Okay, so Calamasa. Oh, you're still pushing buttons, though. Okay, District 1.
And I apologize in advance for my ignorance. I've never dealt with one of these before, these animals. Does it require us, and again, I apologize, does it require us to condemn the Edison system and take it into public ownership, or does Edison still deliver the service? They're just delivering our energy that we bought someplace else.
Correct. They still own their distribution, transmission, and they handle the billing as well. And they charge their normal distribution charges that they've always charged for those.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Washington, you had your button.
I just wanted to see if I can get some clarification. Again, looking through the staff report, the county, Brian, we're estimating the cost of our study, which starts this week, to be about $25,000 to $30,000, $25,000, and we're looking at one approach to setting up a CCA.
Preconditioning approach right now. We're doing an inventory
of what the cost is. Barbara, would it be fair to say that in this report you've already done that?
Yes.
Because you've looked at several CCAs to determine the feasibility of a CCA, and you've analyzed their cost structure to see if they make money or don't make money.
We've done preliminary analysis, and that's where we're at today, which is to have a comprehensive feasibility study done for Western Riverside to see if it makes sense to move forward with development of an implementation.
So you've already done that part where you've looked at whether it makes sense financially or not.
We've done initial looks at how Marin, Sonoma, and Lancaster run. We have not looked at the electrical loads in Western Riverside, which is one of the key components that you need.
Okay, and then the next step would be, I think you're assigning a cost of $45,000 for staff time for the development and issuance of the RFP.
Through the end of the year. So it's working, so it's the development of the RFP working through the end of the year if the consultant's chosen and working with that consultant through the end of the year.
That initial development and issuance of the RFP and the $45,000 cost that goes with that, is there an obligation to spend the balance once, if you get to the end of that and you don't, and the board can't arrive at a place where it sees a proposal that it likes, is that the end of it then? Or are we committing to something beyond that right now?
No, you're only committing to working through the RFP.
RFP process.
Yes.
The $45,000. Okay, I think that's a little confusing. Right now, I think a lot of people are thinking that there's a commitment to spend $250,000 or $300,000 today.
No, the 250 would be, we would release the RFP, we would receive proposals back, we would examine those and determine whether or not, which consultant would be the best. And that consultant may come in lower, may come in higher, may come in, if we expand to the Coachella Valley and/or San Bernardino area, it could change that cost. So that cost, that 250, is down the line when the consultant is selected.
Okay, thank you.
Moreno Valley.
Well, I think we've come full circle. And as was said earlier, an RFP is nothing more than a request for a proposal. There's no money involved in that. The only money involved is obviously staff's time to put together a proposal. And I think Mr. Bishop put it very well. We cannot move forward with any decision without information. The information is only garnered from getting these proposals to us. When those proposals are decided upon, that's when the cost will be projected forward, and I think you've put a cap on that at $250,000. So I don't see the complication here. I think requesting a proposal, we should just go forward with it. I think Mr. Ashley put forth a little caveat to that we tweak it with what the county's already done, and let's just move forward, put out the request, and get the information and make that decision later, and not waste any more time. Thank you.
Corona.
Okay, to belabor this just one bit longer, because Corona's power company is different than Riverside's. Riverside's produces, generates, and delivers the power. The area that Corona has power is similar to this, where we buy the power, sell it to the businesses. There's only certain businesses and some homes. The problem you get to, and part of the RFP should include, from a business perspective, our business, we looked at doing solar. We can produce 100% of our power from solar, and it will only reduce our bill 20%, because Edison will still charge you the demand charges that they currently charge you, which in our case is 80% of our bill. So one of the things when you're looking at the cost difference in power, it will not be a cost difference in your constituents' bills. So please be aware of that this will not save people a dramatic amount of money. So as we go through this whole process, we need to make sure that those questions are asked as well, because to go through all this process to save somebody 50 cents on their bill, and we've spent a couple $1 million getting there, doesn't make a lot of sense, because Edison, as you've seen from the solar surcharges, will come out with a way to make themselves whole. That's what they do. They are a private company, and as long as we are not Riverside, we're not banning, where we're actually in control of the lines, we will not save our constituents money, not appreciable money.
Thank you. Supervisor Ashley, do you want to repeat your motion? I think you had the motion on the floor.
I'll try. Okay. Let's move ahead with it as recommended by the staff, and taking into account that this county is also making a price study, as outlined by Brian Estandy, with one of the companies we're dealing with, and that before, when those results come back, they should be brought back, report back to this body, where we can look at it, and we can at that time decide whether we want to retweak or change in any way the request for proposal is going forward. And if everything looks good, you just keep going. If you see a problem, we can stop at that point. We can pause, because we really don't have to spend very much money at that time.
And is that your second?
Okay.
Moreno Valley. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
That's all we were saying. Sorry. It was a nice discussion. Yeah. Then there's another county's going to find out we got two beating jails.
And that passes with 17 yeses, 1 abstention, and 2 noes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Come on up, Jennifer. Our next item is I lost my screen. captive a healthy western Riverside County.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Jennifer Ward. I'm Director of Government Relations here at WRCOG, and I'm excited to present this item to you today, which marks another milestone in WRCOG's Captivate program. Captivate covers the implementation of WRCOG's Subregional Climate Action Plan, which was adopted in June 2014, as well as other components of our sustainability framework, which was adopted in December of 2012. Captivate is an ongoing effort to really support our member agencies as you all go to adopt climate action plans at the local level, implement energy efficiency programs, healthy communities projects, and generally other ways to address sustainability issues in western Riverside County. Over the past year and a half, we've been working on various components to make this implementation process easier for our member agencies and to expand the scope of Captivate to include adaptation to different weather-related hazards, as well as to address the nexus between healthy communities and climate action planning or sustainability. This phase of Captivate was funded by a generous grant from the Southern California Association of Governments, or SCAG. As you know, they're really a leader in the entire region for these issues. They develop and implement the Regional Transportation and Sustainable Community Strategy every 4 years. So before I invite our lead consultant from Michael Baker International up to give you a quick synopsis of our Captivate project, I want to invite Washa Liu up, who's here today. And Washa is the Director of Environmental Programs, Director of Land Use and Environmental Planning at SCAG. So I'll invite Washa up to say a few words, and then we'll have Jeff Henderson from Michael Baker International provide you with the Captivate presentation.
Thank you, Jennifer. Glad to be here. Happy New Year. I feel that this year is going to be great for all of us, especially for me, because coming to WRCOG is my first work activity for the year of 2016. Good luck, me. I really want to say a couple of words. Thank you for having me here. Under the leadership of Rick Bishop, your executive director and the staff, particularly Jennifer Ward, had really led this effort and working with all of your local jurisdictions and also with SCAG and put together this Captivate program. It is the most comprehensive program in SCAG region, if not in the state as well. And we have 15 subregions in SCAG region. I think this program will be transformative and can be transferred by other subregions and to be used as a model. And thank you. And it is very great to see some of you also on SCAG's board. Thank you.
Thanks, Washa, and thanks again to SCAG for your support. So I'll now invite Jeff Henderson up, and he'll go through some slides on our Captivate Phase 2.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Good afternoon, committee members. I'll attempt to keep this brief, but I want to provide a strong overview of the work program that we've completed over the course of the last year and a half. As Jennifer mentioned, this project is related to SCAG's sustainability framework, which sets the foundation for the overall sustainability and health planning initiatives in the region. It's a two-part project so far. Phase 1 was the development of the sub-regional CAP, which was adopted in 2014. Phase 2, recently funded by SCAG, is the implementation program. We'll talk very briefly about the sub-regional CAP. There were 12 participating cities in that effort, and it highlights health and equity co-benefits associated with potential actions that can reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the sub-region as well as achieve cost savings. And that plan was adopted in 2014, which led us to the implementation phase, which was then initiated pretty much immediately after the adoption of that plan in August 2014. And that this effort is really to integrate climate adaptation, in other words, how the sub-region adapts to various environmental effects associated with climate change, as well as public health components. And it consists of several parts, beginning with an adaptation and resiliency strategy, which is a document that was prepared that identifies the variety of different types of hazards that are known to be associated with changes in the climate, and prepares a vulnerability assessment. In other words, assessing what parts of the subregion are most exposed to these hazards and what assets exist in those areas that are subject to risk. And that is presented then, and was drafted essentially as an additional chapter to the original document, a new Chapter 5, as well as a standalone report that could be used by the jurisdictions that did not participate in the original work for the sub-regional cap. Second piece of this is to really expand on some of the health recommendations of the original sustainability strategy for the sub-region by reconvening the health subcommittee that was formed as part of that initial effort and defining a range of indicators that cross a variety of different public health topics and identifying both what's the baseline condition today relative to these items and what's a good target for the future that shows an improving community health environment in western Riverside County. And that was also, those baseline values and future values were defined, and a method was established to help track progress from today to future years in 2020 and beyond for how well the subregion is doing at achieving those targets. And that's information that can be dialed down to the individual jurisdictions. Third piece of this implementation effort is what we call the implementation model book. This was something that we talked extensively with particularly the planning director's TAC about, which is essentially a plug-and-play toolkit. It's a series of resolutions, model general plan policies, model general plan actions, code sections that take the proposals set forth in the climate action plan and provide sample language that can be essentially modified and adopted by a local agency to implement those programs. So that's the third piece of the program. And then the last piece is what we call the monitoring tool for the climate action plan, which essentially says if the climate action plan recommends a series of measures and has performance standards associated with those measures, what happens year over year as A, jurisdictions employ some of those strategies, and B, consumption patterns change in energy, in water, in transportation, and in waste generation, for example. And so that tool is used to track that progress year over year so that individual councils and individual councils and boards can receive reports essentially documenting the potential success of the program. There's a variety of different types of outreach that were conducted as part of this effort over the last year and a half. Extensive meetings with the Planning Directors Committee were held at key points in the project to review products. And we conducted 2 pop-up workshops, essentially kind of come-as-you-are workshops, one at the Harupa Valley Health Extravaganza, and a second one actually at the SCAG General Assembly, with the idea of interacting, one, with elected officials and folks throughout this portion of the SCAG region, as well as sharing some of these ideas beyond the sub-region toward other jurisdictions that could have equal benefits. And then we also conducted a Mind Mixer website, which was a place to essentially put out ideas and collect responses that helped us formulate the final components of these tools. Next steps in this project, as Jennifer mentioned, Captivate is an ongoing project. And we've now completed the first 2 phases to continue now to monitor and to track that information, both from GHG emissions perspective as well as for health data. And to continue, for WRCOG staff to continue assisting member cities to adopt and to implement the CAP and to incorporate now the new adaptation strategies that are proposed. You may be aware also of the Beyond program, which is beginning to turn some of the HERO revenues back to local jurisdictions, in part to help fund activities that are proposed in the CAP or the sustainability framework. So there's now also a funding stream associated with the program, which leads us to just consider ideas about what could be part of Captivate 2.0 and the next steps in the program. So that concludes our presentation. I think both Jennifer and I are happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions from anyone? Corona? Or is that from last time? Okay. I can't clear it. So. All right. We have no questions. Thank you. Final
Thank you,
remarks?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is just a receive and file, so no action needed. And just thank you for all of your support and for lending us your staff support throughout this project.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next item is the 2016 agency activities update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I haven't told you already, Happy New Year, everybody. Appreciate you spending the first Monday of the year with us. I know that's not easy, but we appreciate that. What I wanted to do is just to provide the Executive Committee with a brief overview of some of the major activities that we'll be undertaking at WRCOG during the year. I will say that the management team and we will be meeting all day next Monday on the 11th. To take what you're going to see in very summary fashion and attach dates to it. So we'll create a master schedule for the year, and we'll be happy to bring that back to you probably as just a consent item so you can see what the delivery dates to each of the activities that we are undertaking are proposed. So in no particular order, just to give you this overview, our Western Riverside Energy Leader Partnership is a partnership that is funded by both Southern California Edison and Southern California Gas Company. It's intended to help the local jurisdictions become leaders in energy efficiency. That's been a very robust program, and I think all the jurisdictions that are participating are seeing great levels of success. As Mayor Hewitt had mentioned, the Calamasa being among the leaders, so we appreciate that very much. So we'll continue those efforts this year. The overall goal for us is to help each of the members at least move up by one tier level in their energy savings. We'll continue to provide forums with all the jurisdictions so that there can be idea sharing. We'll continue with the marketing and outreach, co-branding efforts, and finding ways to help the local jurisdictions, again, really take the lead here in Southern California in energy savings. We'll also conduct our third annual holiday LED light exchange that's been increasingly popular. We expanded that from one locale last year to 5 locations this year, and we'll probably expand that more. Our streetlight acquisition program that is underway, that is a program where we are looking to ultimately purchase all of the approximately 60,000 streetlights in Western Riverside County and then retrofit them to LED and administer a contract that would provide really significant savings to the local jurisdictions. That's a big energy bill to the local jurisdictions, and so with the support and help from you and from our city managers, we're well underway in that process, and we hope to have that completed during this next year, and we'll be providing monthly reports to you. Our TUMF program, a couple major milestones that we'll be undertaking this year. One, I think he was introduced at the last meeting, but Chris Gray is our new Director of Transportation sitting over there. And he's now 7 hours into the job, and he's still with us. So far, so good. Yeah, we consider that a major milestone for us. But some of our major issues this year, we have a construction cost index adjustment. We'll be bringing that to the Administration and Finance Committee next Wednesday for consideration, and depending on their recommendation, bringing that forward to the Executive Committee for consideration in February. We'll be preparing our 2015 annual report, which provides a good overview of the program and also details out expenditures and progress that has occurred since the program was initiated in 2003. We are preparing a new report that we're calling 85 and Counting, and that will be an in-order accounting for every single TUMF project that has been completed since the program started back in 2003. We have just completed receiving proposals, an RFP that we issued right before the holidays to do a very comprehensive analysis of fees and their potential impact on economic development. So we're really excited about that study, and we've got, I think, 7 or 8 proposals that have come in. We will be reviewing the proposals and hopefully initiating interviews next week and bring a consultant on board very soon. And the hope there is to have that report completed to you by late spring, early summer, so that the Executive Committee can have a look at to what extent the program and the associated fees have an impact on economic development. And that just is all part and parcel of the 2016 Nexus study. As you know, per your direction, we're waiting for SCAG to adopt its new regional transportation plan and associated growth forecast. We'll take that growth forecast data and plug it in, and we'll come out with a new fee schedule. So that's all. Those are major tasks that are going to be moving ahead with the TUMF program. Our HERO program will continue to look to expand the program. As Barbara mentioned, 288 cities in California are now part of WRCOG's HERO program, so that number will continue to grow. We've mentioned before, we've now seen over $1 billion in completed projects, so the program continues to grow, and that's something that we're real proud of. Along the lines, we'll continue to find ways to improve the program. With your direction, we've really think that we have developed, adopted, and are implementing very, very strong consumer protections, and to the point now where we're looking this year to have other program providers that are operating throughout California adopt the protections that we have in place, and we think that's important. We will continue to work and educate and partner with our local real estate community. I think we've made great progress in creating relationships with them, understanding their issues and addressing them. We'll continue to do that. This year, we think is going to be a very important year for the program in Washington, D.C., so we'll be wanting to make some trips, at least one trip and maybe more, to meet with officials from FHFA and FHA, the White House staff, and other energy and environmental departments to talk about the programs and really to work hard to influence policy in a positive way that's going to make the program even easier to implement and understand. We received a grant to develop an active transportation plan, and that's a process that's just being initiated. This will be a regional plan where we're going to take a look at the holistic nature of individual paths and trails that are in each of the individual jurisdictions, link them up, look for opportunities to improve active transportation plan as a mode, actual mode of transportation here in Western Riverside County. And then when we complete the plan and present it to you, obviously we'll be looking for funding to actually implement it or portions of it. As you heard earlier today, we'll be moving ahead now with the feasibility study. Could you back up? On the community choice aggregation, and we will work very closely with the county to make sure that there's absolutely no duplication of effort and that we're synced up all the way along. As far as conferences and events, this is the 25th annual General Assembly, so we're going to look for some way to even improve and make that bigger and broader and expand it. It's a really important year, and we'll hope to find a way to showcase that event and highlight the many things that the agency has undertaken over the course of 25 years. We also are looking this year to hold a second annual Future of Cities Conference. We held one last year at the Convention Center. It was really successful, and so this year we're looking at a second conference, and you can see that we've got some ideas about the future of people and figuring out how millennials fit into Western Riverside County's future, the future of housing. I know that the poverty is an issue that's been important to Mayor Bailey, and so we'll incorporate sessions on that and looking at the future of transportation. People are asking us when we're going to hold that Future of Cities Conference, and I think the answer is obvious, and that will be sometime in the future. Probably in spring or early summer. We'll continue to work with the Water Task Force, now the award-winning Water Task Force, and continue to find speakers that can help educate anybody that wants to attend these sessions every month or two. We'll have an Advancing the Choice Expo. We had a tremendous, we've had now 6 environmental youth expos. We'll continue to look to expand that. And in the past several years, we used to run some bus tours, topics of interest. We've run to the ports of LA and Long Beach. We've done drought-tolerant tours. We've toured Diamond Valley Lake, and we're thinking that it might be time to initiate 1 or 2 more of those. So it's going to be a busy year for us as far as conferences and events. We're going to continue to look to expand our communications and social media presence, which I think is pretty robust now, but we'll always be looking for ways to continue to expand that as well through the usual channels and as well as our electronic newsletter. As was mentioned earlier, we'll continue to implement our Captivate program and find ways to, really sync up sustainability, economic development, greenhouse gas emissions reductions in order to try to stay ahead of the curve of state mandates in this area and make it a way for folks to do things voluntarily in a way that improves their economy. We also received a grant from SCAG, and this is something you have not seen, but we've been undertaking a look at the role of land use, transportation, and water quality, working with county flood control, and we'll be preparing an analysis of whether or not there might be a potential for regional approaches to flood control and stormwater management rather than the project-by-project approach that tends to be very burdensome upon individual jurisdictions as well as the development community. So findings to come there. Also, as mentioned as part of the Captivate presentation, we have launched the Beyond program, and so this year we've been able to make $1.8 million available to the member jurisdictions, each of the member jurisdictions, to fund local economic development and sustainability projects. So we're really excited to see what comes out of that. and what moves ahead next year. And then we also have a piece of that beyond dollar amount that will be used in conjunction with working with this year with UCR and Cal Baptist University to fund a fellows program where we can bring the best and brightest from those universities and house them in each of the local jurisdictions and member agencies for an extended internship program. And the idea there is that they'll gain great experience in working for local jurisdictions and our member agencies, and that the member agencies will hopefully fall in love with these students and hire them. So one of the things that we heard when we talked about this with our city managers and with our TAC is that we need to develop some program to not only educates students, which is occurring here in Western Riverside County, but keep them here. And so we thought, what better way to do that than to provide some dollars for this? So we're hoping that will be successful, and we'll hope to launch that in the next few months. As both this board and the RCHCA Board of Directors in the last month have taken action to transfer administrative roles for the RCHCA over to WRCOG, the Board of Supervisors is expected to take action on that tomorrow, so that would be the final piece of this. We are already have been in contact and have been working with RCHCA staff to do some of the physical things that are necessary to migrate them over to the WRCOG offices, and then also to sit down with them and talk about goals and objectives for the year. But the basic idea is just to run that program as smoothly as it has been running in the past, and then to achieve some cost savings in doing so. And then maybe one of the priorities would be to start taking a preliminary look, at least in getting that particular species delisted. So we think we can put some energy into that. Our Clean Cities program is nationally known. We'll continue to work on that with expos, youth conferences. We, last year, for the first time, were able to get into middle school curriculums and meet with students and talk with them about the importance of air quality and the economy and things of that nature. And so that was a pretty well-received program, and we'll be looking to continue to do that. We also perform in partnership with, I think, about 150 businesses throughout Western Riverside County, where they are the repositories for used oils and filters. We do that on behalf of our local member jurisdictions, and that's a program that is, we don't talk about it too much, but it is quite successful, and it really does save the local jurisdictions time and money in allowing us to do that for them. So I think there's some cost economies there. And so overall, I think in addition to that, our major objectives is to continue to find niches that serve your interest and to find ways to do things that help you, to not duplicate effort at all, to be the sounding board for new ideas. So when you think about streetlight acquisition and a HERO program and a CCA, these are we want this agency to be a forum for these kinds of ideas, whether they move forward or they don't. That seems to be where we're able to find some success. Ultimately, we want to stay true to our mission here at WRCOG, which is to respect local control and provide regional perspective. That sounds kind of like a corny tagline, but it works. And that's really one of our bottom line goals. And really there's no reason to operate if you can't provide cost-effective solutions. So hopefully, with your direction and support and your candid feedback, everything we do should achieve that. And I think in all the programs we run, that's our goal, is to make things more cost-effective for our member jurisdictions, and hopefully we're achieving that. So that's just a quick overview and rundown of the things we're going to be working on during the course of the year. Thank you.
Sounds like a busy year. All right. Our next is a report from our TAC chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we start the new year, I was going to give a brief summary on some of the projects that we're going to be working on as a city manager TAC, but Executive Director Bishop did such an amazing job. I'm just going to say we're going to be providing support and assistance as needed. And Happy New Year, everybody.
Thank you. Report from our committee representatives. SCAG Regional Council Policy. Any reports?
Other than that.
Anything from their quality?
We haven't met since our last meeting, so nothing new to report.
Okay.
It's going to be clean. We got that rain coming.
Yes, the rain will definitely help.
Clean air. It's going to be real clean.
The more rain, the better for the air quality. So.
All right.
It's too big to fail.
Report from our executive director.
I have no report.
Okay. Any input for future agenda items? Okay. Any general announcements? No general announcements? Well, we have closed session. I turn it over to our counsel.
Yes, we do have one closed session item. We have two listed, but we're only going to do the first one. We're going to ask, because we have a fairly large board today, it looks like, I'm going to ask the board members to come down to the audience. It should be short.